And welcome to the hot Bizfluent Podcast, where we get all up in your business. So let's talk. Today's guests are brought to you by Crush City Realty Group, your premier Houston real estate experts, and luxury real estate agent Elissa Emmons, where everything she touches turns to sold. And finally, Covo Capital, fast, flexible financing for all your commercial lending needs. This podcast is for informational purposes only. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the Bizfluent Podcast or management. Don't forget to stay to the end to find out how to get some of our amazing merch. Now let's get down to business.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 16. Today is, I guess to you, is November 21st. We are a week away from Thanksgiving, so I hope everybody's planning for these holidays. Everybody's looking to have a great holiday. Unfortunately, today, Josh is out sick. He came up with a little stomach bug, but that's okay because I've got me and the wonderful Miss Elissa here.
Yes.
How are you today, Miss Elissa?
Fantastic. How are you?
I'm blessed. Thank you for asking. So today we are running a little bit of a skimpy podcast, and it probably won't be a full hour, but who knows? We may talk for 3. We don't know. We're not joking. We're not talking for 3 hours.
I can confirm it will not be 3 hours.
So, kind of in the beginning of the podcast, like we always do, we get together, we group and talk things through. One of the things that my team is doing and what you're doing are kind of pretty similar. We're getting ready for the new year. So what does your new year look like? So when we talked about number one, like me and my team, we personally run our fiscal year. And so there are people that are new. You have a calendar year, which everybody knows is January 1st to December 31st. But you also have a fiscal year, which lots of people operate January 1st to December 31st. But I've seen companies that operate different. I was just in a class with somebody that operates from October 1st to September 30th and kind of run theirs that way. And so as long as you set it up with the IRS and you run your fiscal year and you keep it like that, then you can move your fiscal year to whatever you want. So for the purposes of this podcast, because both Elissa and I operate fiscal year same as a calendar year, when we talk about our fiscal years, you can think of it as January 1st to December 31st. Mm-hmm. So 2024 is toast. Pretty much any deals you've started, any planning you've started is either already played out or is in the books to be played out, and you're about to spend the money. So you're getting ready for January. How do you plan what you've got going on?
Well, so I start looking at the next fiscal year, the next calendar year. I start that in October. And that's just how it's kind of always been in our office. So that was just the habit that I adopted. We are blessed in that our office brings in fantastic guest lecturers to discuss business planning. So we have business planning clinic, and we're getting to be around others that are doing the same business that we are, talking about the same types of things, how you plan to grow in the next year. And that may be that looks like one day, and yet you're not done after one day. So you take the information that's given to you in that day. You've done some calculations, figured out, what you want your gross income to be for the next year, because our income's not set. We're, the sky's the limit. You can do whatever you're capable of. Set your mind to it, go accomplish it. So a lot of the goal setting comes based around what do you want that income to look like, so that you can figure out based on your history how many families you need to help that year. That's in real estate. Other industries, you've got many different factors that go into how you business plan.
So you brought up a couple of things, but the first one that I really want to hit on, because it is important to look at, not just for our industry in real estate. And it doesn't matter whether you're in commercial, if you're in luxury, or if you're in regular residential, or if you specialize in something, land and ranch, none of that matters. One of the things that's very, very important is when you're goal setting, right? Number one, what do you consider a goal? And then number two, you always want your goal to be incredibly high and achievable, but not unrealistic.
Yes.
So when you're looking at your goals, number one, when do you consider it an actual goal and not a dream? And then when you're setting your goal, and your income is your income, we're not worried about that. But if you were looking at a number, how is it that you figure on a percentage wise based on growth where you think you can hit a number?
So okay, the first part of your question is, when is it a goal and not a dream? Is when it's written down and there's a plan around it. Otherwise it's just a thought, a dream, and if there's no, what's the phrase? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Right.
So if you don't have written actions about what you're going to do or what is needed to accomplish this one goal, then it's a dream. And then what was the second question? I tried so hard to remember the first one, but I forgot the second.
So if like, I mean, you want to set a lofty goal, right? Like,
yes.
Like if you made $100,000 last year, which by the way is incredibly easy, no matter what sector of real estate you're in, there are a lot of agents that come in and hit $100,000 in their first year. So if you want to hit $100,000 gross commission, would you look at that and say, okay, well, cool. The next year I want to make $1 million. Is it potentially possible? Well, absolutely. In real estate, you can make $1 million a year. There are plenty of agents that do.
Mm-hmm.
But is it realistic for you on your first year versus your second year, going from $100,000 to that? And so regardless of what your actual dollar is that you set for yourself, how is it that you make sure you're setting a lofty goal because you want to be better the next year than you were this year?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not aiming to hit the same number. You're always aiming to hit higher, but you want it to be a realistic lofty goal where if you miss, you just barely miss it. But even then you're still better off than you were last year. How do you look at that?
So I look at goal setting for the next year is also part of that is reflecting upon the previous 9 months. And then even looking at the entire year prior to that. So looking at 2023, how did that year go? Look at 2024. How is it going thus far? Where are we at as compared to 23? And then for me, it's a lot about how does that feel? Was there room for growth with the current structure that my business has? You have a team. And so your structure is there's you, and then there's 4 other people within your team. So the ability to do more is there because there's 5 people. I have 1 person, just me, and I choose to run my business that way. There's no right or wrong way. I've had employees before and I don't want employees ever again. So I run it that way. And I have to look at how did my whole life feel at this number of families helped.
Right.
And if there's room for growth there, okay, what percentage more growth could there be and still maintain this level of involvement in my family, which is my most important, cherished thing, being there for my kids and my husband. And, if I were to add in some pieces that are not employees, but, back end things, other additional resources, what level of growth could there be realistically?
So when you're talking about those, yeah, because at the end of the day, the problem is you as an individual only has so much time. And it's kind of one of the issues that even me and my business partner run into quite often is we wind up being doers far more often than we are managers.
Yes.
And that was a very hard transition for me. When when I went from being in operations in the trucking industry into supervision and management.
Mm-hmm.
Is I was so used to being the guy banging on the keyboard, digging in the loading a trailer, whatever it took to get the job done. I was there to do it, versus the guy making sure that the people that were doing the job were super efficient.
Yes.
And so, like you jokingly said, but I know it's wrong. There's no way you're not going to have any employees, but you do leverage some of your time off, right?
Yes. So I have certain people that do back end things that are not, they do not work directly for me. I pay them as like a service. So each time they do this task for me, they get paid for that task. So I am not responsible for I am not solely responsible for that person being able to put food on their table that day.
And I think that's a big thing, that if there's one thing I've learned from being at Keller Williams, and the last thing I want, because both of us, I'm with KW Commercial, and Elissa is with KW, Keller Williams, as well as KW Luxury. And so I don't want this to be a KW commercial as much as Kevin would love that. But the thing is if there's one thing I learned from Keller Williams and being a member of Keller Williams, is there's always somebody you can leverage stuff off to. I've got a very good friend I've got a very good friend of mine, Sarah Copeland, who runs Social Hive and Social media management out of LaPorte. And Sarah, getting a free plug here, is one of those people that you can pay, like you said, a service on the side where you're like, hey, look, I need to be posting 2 things a day. I just don't have that time anymore, because spending time with my children is far more important than spending time on social media. And so you be able to handle that off. Another one that nobody else that's not in real estate doesn't care about is you use transaction coordinators, right?
Yes.
And so that means
I was trying to keep it generic.
Yeah. And so for anybody out there that doesn't know what a transaction coordinator is, that's somebody that more or less handles all the paperwork. They're the go-between between the actual agent and the person buying, and then your title company, kind of in between. And they're a per transaction type kind of business. But through a lot of other businesses, you can find people that pretty much do the same thing: virtual assistants, part-time assistants, people that are coming fresh out of college looking for internships, and that'll fit all kinds of things. If you go to find somebody that's looking to get into your world, they're willing to work for you on a 1099 basis. I almost guarantee it, because they want the experience. And if they can get paid a little bit while they're, if they can make a little bit of money while they're gaining experience and get some college credit on top of that, they're going to be willing to work for you. So as long as you don't need help digging a ditch, it's pretty easy to find fairly cheap labor for people that are actually looking to do the same job you're wanting to do. So yeah, you don't have any more W-2 employees, but 1099s all day.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about that, how is it that leverage allows you taking your time, and you're buying time by paying them to spend time with your family, but also to grow, because now your day is less full, and now you can spend time doing what it is you do best. So what is it that you particularly do that helps you to grow?
I mean, as far as business planning goes, it's figuring out what those pieces are, where I could add some leverage. And then once the leverage piece is in place, it's just going out and doing my job, meeting with people, figuring out what their needs are in that moment, and figuring out how I can best assist their needs. And so the pieces that I hire out are more of the data and paperwork.
Like back end.
Yeah.
All the back end stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're a salesperson at heart, regardless whether you're in real estate or you sell pipe, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
You're a salesperson. And the last thing, just like cops, what are cops good at? Cops are good at arresting people, stopping crimes from happening, and writing tickets. Well, the guys the last thing they want to do is be back at the station writing up paperwork. They want to be doing their job. They didn't become a cop to become a secretary.
Yeah.
And so we're the same way.
I will say that today I was working on a new Google form that I'm implementing next year in my business. And
nice.
Like there is a level of satisfaction of completing the task. Like you're talking about, it's different to manage people, and it is. And so there's like when you're managing people, or you're even just managing your own business, there's there's not a finite end to it. So you don't often get to celebrate the yes, I got that done. And so today I got that done, and I was excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, look, I've been wanting to tackle this project for the last 2 weeks after the 4 Pillars workshop, and today I was like, it's not going to take me that long. It took me I did 2 different forms. Took me less than an hour, but it was accomplishment. And sometimes it's nice to just have that box to check off.
So if you were to talk about yourself personally, like on a personal level, are you a detail person or are you a big picture person?
Probably more detail.
Detail. See, like I'm a big picture person, man. Like I'll give a great example. For everybody that doesn't know, that we record all of our podcasts on Wednesdays at 2:00. We've been doing it now. This is now the 20th episode that we're recording, but it's the 22nd day that we've done this. Plus, on top of that, we had like 2 or 3 dry runs where we kind of got in and popped in and got to know each other all a little bit better, so that we could see how we actually really melded. And so we've been doing this for 25 weeks, right? 25 to 26 weeks. And even though it happens every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. every Wednesday, today I scheduled a team meeting at 1:30 p.m. There was going to be a guaranteed 1.5 to 2 hour meeting. And I had to call my business partner and be like, yeah, so you know how that thing that we do every Wednesday? He's like, nope. I'm like, yeah, you know how I record my podcast every Wednesday? He's like, yep. I was like, it happens at 2:00. He's like, and luckily he was getting hammered pretty hard. And so because of that, we just decided to go ahead and move everything around as opposed to trying to squeeze things in and do things around that way. So planning is more than just 1 year at a time. But another big thing that most people don't think about is when you're planning, and I don't care whether it's a sales job or if it's just your own company and you're washing windows for a living. If you've got people that you take care of, employees and stuff like that, the other thing you have is you've got events that happen, right? Mm-hmm. And be it whether you actually hold an event yourself or if it's just a holiday. And so one of the things that my company really failed at this year, like miserably, and back in 2023, me and my business partner, was just the 2 of us. We hadn't even brought an agent on, and we were like, hey, we've got to do this better next year. And then here we are 2 weeks before the taste of town, like 10 days, not even 14 days. It was like 10 days going, running around like our hair with our hair caught on fire, going, we need to do this. And we wind up wasting a lot of money and a lot of time away from our clients. Trying to get things done for an event. Now, the event wound up being great, and we're very happy that we went and did this event in Pasadena, Texas, called Taste of the Town. But at the same time, God, we could have spent our money better. We could have spent our time better and not been a waste. And so in that whole thing, we decided, you know what? this year we have to plan. So the meeting that we were
Yes.
planning that I failed to plan properly for was a planning meeting. And so now we're meeting on Friday, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, you know, well, I'm the same way that you are. If it's not written down, it's not a goal, it's a dream. And you don't achieve dreams. You
Well, and you
achieve
can't
goals.
plan around something that's not written down.
No. And if you are, it's
in writing.
right. And it's prepared for, and you might not have the funds to do Christmas next year yet, but you have a goal. So your plan isn't just like, hey, I want to have Christmas next year.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to do Christmas. This is how much money I'm going to budget for it. This is what I plan on doing. And then you set the basic scaffolding up, and you get that scaffolding, and then you build the event around the scaffolding.
Yes.
But if you don't have it even planned, then you got nothing.
Yeah. And I think all plans have to start with some monetary something in mind, because you're talking about like planning an event. I think the first thing you need before you plan an event is a budget for said event.
Right.
So, also, if you're looking to plan your business to get your budget in line, you need to figure out what the goal is for how much money you're going to make that year.
Yeah.
Whatever the business is. If it's real estate, if it's a restaurant, like, you have to have a goal so that you can back it into and make up your budget so that you can make a plan of what you're going to be spending money on and how you're going to spend the money and how you're going to pay people, all the things.
So the last 2 years have been pretty rough. I think pretty well across the board. I think Houston, I don't think people in the rest of the nation understand how big of a blessing it is to live in the Houston area. There's only a couple areas in this country.
We're full. Go away.
We actually
You can move within Houston. JP and I will help you. You're staying here, but if you, we'll set you up in.
I'll set you up in a permanent Airbnb.
No, we'll set you up in Sealy.
Dayton.
Hempstead. Let's grow Hempstead. It needs to grow.
Hempstead. There you go. There you go. So I think the biggest thing is being here is because of all the industry that we have that really, when the medical field is up, oil's down, and when the oil, back and forth, whatever, they kind of feed off each other. So because of that, Houston is just this great spot to live in. Then on top of that, we have the space program here. And with as much as everybody wants to laugh about it, let's face it, Space Force is real. It's going to be getting bigger. And now we have one of the very first space ports here out at Ellington Field. And a lot of that space has already been sold off. And they're in the process of building new buildings out there, some of them to support the space program, some of it to support the actual Space Force that's occurring.
Texas A&M is building a space institute.
Yeah. Engineers, that's what you get. You know, they couldn't figure out where to put the blinker fluid, but they sure as heck figured out how to put the hole in it. I love Aggies. I love you guys so much. So with those three being the main industries here in Houston, we don't really get a lot of downs. Like, we get a down, but they're like crossing each other in the process. One's coming down, the other one's going up, and they make it so much easier for us. But even then, we still feel it. We just feel it last, and we feel it way less than the rest of the country. Yeah. And so when we're planning for our fiscal year, we also have to look at that. And I wish to God I was more conservative than I am. But I am not conservative. I still set pretty freaking lofty goals. And with the new election and the changes that are being said to come, if they really do start coming by, middle of or the end of the first quarter, middle of second quarter, then our years could be completely different.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, when you're starting to look at that, where are you looking at spending your money? Like on a percentage wise, are you looking to spend, 10% on events and gifts and, cards and stuff like that for your clients? And what is it that you're looking at spending? I guess I should say, what are you looking at spending your money on outside of your normal advertising? And like, what percentage of your income are you looking at spending?
Yeah. So, I would say I plan on increasing my advertising marketing budget a hair this year and doing some more focus on social media. It's been a pain point of mine. And so that's an area that I've looked at outsourcing and leveraging. But I don't want to leverage that to a virtual assistant that's not in the United States. I mean, I could do that much more cost effectively, and yet that's not what my brand is like. Does that make sense?
That's a big deal. No, that's a big deal because I mean, here's the deal. Like, one of the biggest problems that I've had when people look at my branding, I've got an Astrodome behind me wearing an Astros hat, and me from being around in the office that I pretty much wear some kind of Astros gear every single day.
Every day.
There's been a couple days I didn't, but it doesn't happen.
I don't
very
recognize
often.
him when he shows up and he's not in an Astros shirt. Like, it just
Something.
I'm like,
Yeah.
who's that guy? Who's that tall person? I don't know.
And the thing is I think that's a man, that is such an awesome rock to set your business on. And
Mhm.
people don't like it sometimes. That, part of my brand is I'm all about the Astros. I'm a huge baseball fan. I'm a huge Astros fan. And so because of that, if you're not an Astros fan and you don't want to do business with me, you're doing me a favor. I'm not doing you a favor. Like, trust me, like, you not want to do business. And I find it very compelling to do business with somebody who also says, I am a made in America type kind of person. And because of that, yes, I have opportunities to go overseas to the
Mhm.
Philippines. Philippines offers all kinds of virtual assistants for everything in the world.
Yes.
And for, I mean, let's face it, just like $1,500 a month for a full-time assistance. And what that person actually probably makes is probably close to $800 a month. And so when you really think about it from that perspective, because we, like Josh Perella and I talked about potentially getting a virtual assistant to help us grow our podcast channel.
Mhm.
And they wanted $750 a month to do the same thing. And so I'm like, wow. So yeah, they probably really are only making about $800 a month. And so that we're paying them $200 a week. So it's very economical for me to do it. But is that the principle you stand on? So when you're talking about the rest of your fiscal and your financial standing, you sacrifice a full-time assistant over a social media assistant that is homegrown, like Sarah Copeland.
Yeah. And so next week we have Elissa Emmons. She's going to be our guest next week, and she is a social media strategist. So she's going to be speaking to this. And yet, for me, it's more about being able to have a conversation and someone that has an understanding of what our social, like,
our culture.
how do I say this? Yeah, our culture.
Yeah.
Now I've worked with, in a different aspect of my job, I've worked with VAs that are in the Philippines, and can they create awesome things? Yes. And yet it's not me. And it's like, there's just sometimes a lack of understanding of what it is exactly that I'm looking for. And like, what am I trying to say? Because it's not even so much about like just wanting to support someone that's lives here,
Well, where were
there's
you born and raised?
cultural difference. Like it's just
Yeah. And that changes everywhere in the States because our state's big. So
yeah.
where were you born and raised?
So I went to high school on the northwest side of Houston in Klein.
Okay.
But I was born here, and then born in Clear Lake, and then we moved up to the north side, went to A&M, and then after graduation, my husband, I moved to Pearland.
So were we born in the same hospital? I was born in Webster.
Yes.
Oh, look at
I was
that.
born at Clear Lake Regional.
Yep. Well, it was Clear Lake Regional when I was born. Was it? Yeah, I think it was Clear Lake Regional when I was born there.
Yes.
Like
we were. Cheers.
I think we're like the same age. We're pretty damn close to the same age anyway, which we're not talking about today. Have a nice day. Bye. But so yeah, so I was born in Clear Lake Regional, and you were, regardless, were raised right here in Houston. And there's some small differences in the city of Houston, but like there's a huge difference in culture even between Houston and Dallas, Houston and San Antonio. Yeah. And then even more so, if you go to Austin, one of my favorite sayings about Austin is, you know what the best part of Austin is? It's only a few minutes away from Texas. Like, because Austin is more or less our Los Angeles. And so like way not a typical Texas culture there. And then you go down to South Texas, and I mean, like, wow, once you get past Corpus Christi, I mean, like here in Houston, we're used to running people off this, road if they're in the fast lane doing 100 and you want to do 105. You go down to South Texas, if you want to do 1 mile an hour faster than them, they like pull off onto the side of the road, let you pass, wave at you, and they're not giving you the one finger salute. They're saying, "Hi, how you doing? Have a nice day." So yeah, I agree with that. Those cultural differences are huge. I mean, we're not just from Houston, we're from Texas. You can go anywhere in the United States to a beach and find a Texas flag.
Yeah.
Like I ain't never seen a California flag flown here. I ain't never seen a North Carolina flag or a South Carolina flag flown here or a Florida flag. You go to any of those places, and I guarantee you, if it's a good beach day, you can find a Texas flag.
Yeah.
So culture is a big deal.
Like as you're talking about that, even sometimes when I would ask this person to do some sort of social media post related to real estate, like they don't know what our houses look like here. So I'd end up with like Cape Cod style houses on this real estate post. And so it's just that understanding and that forethought of knowing that the whole United States is not all the same. So that's why I was looking at having somebody else.
And we don't ride horses. Well, I mean, some people ride horses. I'm perfectly capable of riding a horse, but I learned how to ride a horse in California, not Texas. And I don't carry a 6-shooter. So I don't wear spurs.
You do carry, just not a 6-shooter.
Yes. I need a lot more bullets than that. So seeds of freedom, lots of them.
Yes.
And so I think that's important, but you have to budget for it. That's again, when we talk about your fiscal year, because I mean, that's a big difference between $1,500 a month that you'd spend on a virtual assistant for a full-time 40-hour a week employee versus it seems cheaper, but in the end, it really isn't. Like you're paying, I think, I don't know how much you've been looking at, but I think like the top plan from the Social Hive, I think Sarah's like $395 a month, and that's like a guaranteed post a day. Making sure that all your stuff is up to date, helping you send out advertisements. You still pay for your advertisements, but getting them prepped and ready to be sent out and for you to pay for them. And so there's a lot of engagement for that $400 a month. But in all reality, because she does it on a full-time basis, that's probably only like 3 to 5 hours a week for her.
Yeah.
So your dollar per hour goes way shorter than what you get from somebody you're paying $1,500 a month for 40 hours a week. And so there's that portion. So you're leveraging that. So even on a top tier, say you're spending somewhere between $400 and $500 a month. But now you're talking about your admins on the other side. How much do you budget? Because we have a pretty fixed cost. But if you were to look at your fixed cost for your in-house admin for doing transaction coordinating, goodness gracious, like how much do you spend? Like when you think of how many transactions you're going to do, because it's a fixed cost per transaction, like how much are you thinking? How many transactions are you expecting this next year?
Well, and so that's what you have to figure out is how many transactions, like what is the goal for number of transactions, because the transaction coordinator expense it's a cost of goods sold. It is only paid if there is a transaction that goes through. So kind of just set up a formula in Excel or sheets for that of, if transactions are X times $400 is my expense for transaction coordination for the year. And then there's times where, just depending on what it's looking like, there's the transaction coordinator will also do listing preparation for an additional fee. And so it just depends on where I'm at that year, or if I'm about to go on vacation, I'm going to outsource that. Just so that there's someone else watching over it, because I may not be in the country. And so it's like, I want that person.
That's another big one though. So that's something else that we're talking about on a fiscal year. When you are the bottom line, like that's something else you really have to plan on. Like, it's not like you work for somebody where so they can say, hey, don't worry about it. I'll get Sue Ann over here to go ahead and cover for you while you're gone. Just make sure she knows what's going on.
Yeah.
You are going to pay another agent. You're going to not make very likely not make as much money while you're on vacation.
Correct.
And you have to pay for your vacation. So if you take a $2,000 vacation, just for an easy round number, you can almost guarantee you're going to spend $4,000 just to be able to take that vacation. Because by the time you get done paying somebody else, by the time you get done looking at your potential lost business, the fact that you're not busy working.
Yes.
The other thing is I don't know how you do it, but my wife, she hates it a lot, but I just can't not. One of the first times we went to Puerto Rico, she took pictures of me walking around on the beach on the phone, like trying to save a deal. So I don't really take vacation. I mean, I pay money to go on vacation, but I don't actually experience vacation very often. How about you?
Yeah. I was on like once in a lifetime trip this summer for my dad's 70th birthday. It was an amazing opportunity. We were sailing on a mega yacht with a whole bunch of his friends in Croatia, and I had 5 different transactions that I was negotiating at that time.
Wow.
So there were frequently times where I had to step down and I'm hours time difference. So yes, it is making sure that you've got, international data wherever you're going, so that you can be reachable. It's having, for me as a solopreneur, it is having people that I trust that can help me, boots on the ground. So I have, colleagues. We have a great office and I'm blessed for that. But so I have colleagues that will go and help my clients, like if they need to see a house or,
right.
If I have a listing and just somebody needs in and I need a door to be opened, I have people that will help with that. I do have the transaction coordinator, and that's great. And yet negotiation is still on me.
Right.
My transaction coordinator is not going to negotiate. There's only one other agent that I will that
you trust.
That I trust to negotiate for my clients. And, if we both plan a vacation at the same time, then it just...
Well, you're gonna have to find
I'm negotiating in the middle of a birthday party. Like it just...
That's awesome.
No, it's not, but it is, it's how we put food on the table. So
I think that's one of the things that's a big misunderstanding, and somebody that needs to understand it. It's maybe not as much about the fiscal, but it is just as much about the fiscal stuff. Is that when you are an entrepreneur and it's 100% on you. That it's not about, even if you want to build a team, your team, when the cat's away, the mice will play, right? Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, you are the reason you make money. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's you. And so the luxury of it is you're like, hey, I get to set my own schedule. And that's the way it feels and looks. In reality, it's like, hey, my clients get to set my own schedule.
Yeah.
And I've got some pretty hard lines in the sand that I draw. Sunday is about the only really hard line. Wednesday between 7 and 8, I'm in church. Sunday is God's day. Wednesday at this time, I'm in church. I go to church on Tuesdays too. That one's a little bit more flexible. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, if you're not working, you're not making money. It is nothing to do. Like you said, you're on a cruise in the middle of Croatia. So were you in the Black Sea or the Mediterranean?
In the Med.
In the Med. So you're in the Mediterranean, out in the middle of freaking nowhere, sailing with a bunch of other people. And here you are trying to settle deals back home, yes, 4,000 miles away, and trying to coordinate everybody. And that's the thing is, it's like you're not trying to coordinate one. You've got to get somebody to go show, somebody that's going to do this, open doors, be there for them, plus coordinate with whoever's going to be doing inspections and just all that stuff all lined out. And you're like, and I'm on a boat. Like, yeah, it doesn't, who cares? So yeah. Nobody cares.
No, so, they don't. And I mean, and
they shouldn't. I mean,
yeah.
You're transacting the biggest transaction of their life.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. So that's a pretty big deal when you're talking about planning out your fiscal years, getting all that ready.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it does go in, there is this faction that is thinking about, okay, I'm planning out my year. These are the vacations I want to take. Are those times feasible? Because real estate does have kind of a high season, and that's the time of year that my kids are like, I have young school age children. So they're out of school during that high season. I would like to vacation with them while they're out of school. And yet, is that the best thing for my business?
And the same thing when it comes to the other breaks too. The other breaks, that's when parents are trying to move. So they're trying to, get ready. So now you're talking about the same thing. You're stuck.
Yeah. So not stuck, just have to creatively find solutions.
There you go. You're not stuck. You're creative. So
we are problem
solvers. Big one. Well, that's our job. That really is our job to be problem solvers. So if you can't solve your own problems, probably in the wrong business.
Yeah.
So the next question is kind of going back to that whole thing, right? So we're problem solvers, which is super awesome. I really enjoy it. I like having to look at things. I'm a big picture person. I'm not super detailed, but I am detailed enough. Like I'm a spreadsheet guy. So I'm detailed enough that I can see changes occurring for good and bad. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's been really tough for me over the past 2 years, year and a half since my business partner and I started our team together, is I've seen a lot of the problems that I used to cause myself start to go away. So it's been a very positive thing. But I've also noticed a lot of the mistakes that we make as a team. And it's been, Josh would probably say it's been an incredibly stressful year for him because I've been so stressed out, and I am definitely the hammer. And like I tend to be very forceful, and people in our office hear me quite often when I get frustrated at things. Yeah. I'm kind of big and boisterous. And so if I'm mad,
it carries.
And you see the chip on my shoulder as soon as I walk in the door. So, I mean, bless Josh for having to put up with me. But besides that, where have you learned from your mistakes? Like, where have you taken, like, if you were to look at 2024 and you're projecting getting yourself ready for 2025, where is it that you see not necessarily something went bad, but could have been done better? And how are you using the knowledge of where your losses were, or your I'm not as good as I should have been, moving forward into 2025?
So if there's ever anything that I notice within a time where I'm helping a family, or let's just use the generic term, during a transaction, if there's ever a time where I've noticed that something was not ultimately how I would like for it to be, that's not the experience I want to provide to those people, I'm not waiting till 25 to fix it. Like, it's getting fixed the next time. So I mean, and then every workshop or training or seminar that I go to that has a good idea of how to better the process, like, the work to strive for that starts immediately. It's not waiting till 25. So I think for me, like, business planning, it really does more so come down to the financial side of it and the plan, but the day-to-day, how you fix a problem.
So I think you brought up a pretty good idea, though. That's kind of what I was looking for. And maybe, and we kind of went around it, but went around and then found it. So one of the things that you brought up was your classes, right? Mm-hmm. So you teach classes, mm-hmm. At least once a quarter, but on top of that, you go to a lot of classes, and you go to at least 2 functions a year. The 2 functions I know for a fact you go to every year are Mega Camp and Family Reunion. And those are Keller Williams things for you guys out there. Anybody is allowed to come. So mm-hmm. if you're interested, all you have to do is go to events.kw.com, and you can see all the events. It is not just for Keller Williams people. And I guarantee you that if you come, these people that you're talking to, if you own a business, you can see the parallels in how we operate our businesses and how somebody else should operate their business, regardless what the business model is. But you make those events cost money. Mm-hmm. They cost time.
Yep.
The ones that you put on, you don't get paid for.
Correct.
And so they cost you more time.
Yes.
But then you go to other classes, just like the luxury class that was a couple of weeks ago, that you do have to pay for. Yep. And so you budget that stuff out too. So even if you haven't necessarily had problems where you can see that you can improve, you're always trying to grow.
Yes.
Like going to the next class. What's the new idea that I haven't figured out, or I haven't missed, or whatever? So that's a pretty big deal too. What did you pick up? What was a key thing out of this last class? Because it was done by our luxury director. What was it that you picked up that was the most aha, or the biggest aha you had from that would apply to all businesses?
Oh, apply to all businesses. I had my answer ready. I was like, oh, I got it. Apply
it to your business.
Okay. Applying to all businesses. I think in general, irregardless of what industry you're in, you deal with people on a daily basis. You could be something completely online, and yet you either have a coworker, a colleague, an employee, there's people that you work with, there's vendors that you work with, anything like that. Like, it's just listening to the people and finding out what's important to them, and whatever is important to them becomes important to you. In the world of selling real estate, you would think that the most important thing is getting the person's house sold or helping them purchase a house. And while, yes, that's the tangible thing, the intangible, or maybe tangible, things come from conversations and listening, and paying attention to what is important. Asking someone why, or what are you going to miss most about this house that you're selling? You may learn a lot just by asking a question like that. And that's something that then you can act upon in the end to provide an amazing experience and make them feel valued, as opposed to just selling.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's another thing that's a big deal. Like, so what you just talked about, I think would really be broken down into one of the things that we always talk about. At the end of the day, I don't really sell a product. I don't have a product to offer you. The service I offer you is the same service that somebody else down the street could offer you for the exact same price, by the way. Free for a buyer, or 3 to 6% for a seller, depending on, what the setup is. All that stuff is negotiable. We do not have a set price at 6%. I've been trained to say this quite a bit now.
It's always been negotiable.
It's always been negotiable. So one of the things on my
rant,
right? So one of the things that I think that I look at is I try to tell people is my business is relationships. And we talk about that in this podcast all the time. And even the guy that came in talking about his manufacturing is about relationships. You just got done talking about why you would go with somebody to handle your social media here, not necessarily just in Texas, but somebody here located in the Houston area, because it's important enough to you that they know, which means it's a relational thing already, because you're from Houston, they're from Houston. They know where it is. They know what it's about. They know what being from Houston is. It's a huge difference.
Well, and relationally, if I'm going to have someone handling my social media, or not handling, assisting with my social media is how I further relationships with the people on the other side.
Yeah.
So that it's so strong, having decent relationships, that I need somebody who fully understands how social media works in the United States and what the purposes of it are.
Yeah. And even more than just the United States, just here, because somebody wants to move here from Pennsylvania. They go, oh, hey, look, I've got a beautiful house on the Schuylkill River, and I'm ready to sell it, but I really want to move to Houston. Who can I talk to? What can I get for the same price? And they're like, hey, here's this lady that's obviously from the area, and she's a luxury agent. And so I want to go down there and find out what my $1 million I just sold up here can get me down in Houston. And you know the area, you know what it is. And that has to be translated through your social media. It has to be translated through all of your advertising, because otherwise I'm just another guy. And I'm not just another guy. I'm a Houston Astros fan. I'm a massive baseball fan. I've lived in Seabrook and Clear Lake my whole life, with the very few years outside of it. And so it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, if that can't be translated, then I got a problem.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So fiscal planning 2025, we talked a lot about more than just money, but how we spend our money and why we spend our money the way we do. I think that's a big important factor that a lot of people don't think about is it's one thing for me to pull out a spreadsheet and spend 30 minutes going over it saying, okay, I'm going to spend X number of dollars on this and X number of dollars on that. But why I spend it is far more important than how much I spend.
Yeah. Yes. And it's not a one-time create it and be done with it. You have to keep every month, if not twice a month, come back to it. Because if you're not on track, then you need to adjust it. If you're not on track to hit your goals, you need to adjust your budget. And you could be not on track to hit your goals plus or minus. If you're on track to,
right.
If you're on track to blow your goals out of the water, you need to adjust. It's not just like you don't keep going with less when you could, if turning a certain key would give you more, and am I making sense? And
no, absolutely.
Key.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, the whole thing is this year we plan to have 40 or 50 people at our little,
Photos with Santa.
Photos with Santa. We wound up having 15 people show up. So like way over planned. And we were okay with it because we didn't know exactly where we're going to be. So we tried to be pretty skimpy. We got a couple of people to pitch in for us and try to help get things together. But then turn around, and we've planned on it. And so that next year we can be aiming at getting 150 people there, period. And probably inviting closer to 500 people that would maybe or maybe not come. But with that being the case, it also means that now we have to be able to prepare and get our budget in line for having 150 people show up.
Yeah.
And then maybe not be okay with it, but at least understand that when only 50 show up, we still spent the money for 150.
Yeah.
It just kind of is what it is.
Yeah.
So, well, I think it was a pretty good podcast, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I didn't run you over all day today.
It was back and forth. That was
good. I'm trying.
No,
I got told by a city councilman last week on the 12th when I went in for my EDC interview, and I said, he goes, we haven't been seeing you at a lot of meetings lately. Why is that? And I said, well, because I don't want to come across as adversarial, and I'm pretty sure you know where I stand on a lot of these issues. And so I wasn't trying to come and make it known how firm or whatever I wanted to be on things. It's like, I'm here to change the city. I want to change the city for the better. And he was like, yeah, you're pretty big, you're loud and boisterous. And he said, you need to figure out how to calm it down. I'm like, you're not the only person that's told me that. Yeah. It hasn't changed yet, though.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't know that it needs to change.
Yeah, shutting up. God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. I just forget it for a whole lot. Yeah. So why don't you take us out? I always take us out. You take us out.
All right. So next week we have a fantastic guest that will be coming to us to talk about social media, which is something that we discussed today. So make sure you join us next week. Thank you for participating and listening in this week. I have a hair on me that I cannot figure out where it is. I have lots of hairs, but
that's going to go in a reel.
Listening. We're so excited y'all are here. Leave us a comment, like, subscribe, all the things, share with your people. We just appreciate it. And y'all have a fantastic rest of your week. Cheers.
Have a blessed week, everybody. Bye.